How does a healed mind see the world? Years ago, I met a woman. After a decade, I'd been studying yoga in India, and I met this woman in England. And for about 15 years, she'd been in a coma. She could only move her little finger. And I asked her once what her experience of life was like inwardly, and she said, "The joy inside is almost too much to handle. It's almost too much." And I was talking to her once about whether she liked watching the news. You watch the news, you see stories of war, stories of abuse. Majority of the news stories are things that are going wrong in the world. And occasionally, usually at the end of a segment, you'll get some happy news. It's the death of a famous person. It's a new war that started in Africa or the Middle East, or some fraud case that's going through the court, or some celebrity that's fallen from grace. Majority of the news is in that way, or some pessimism about the economy, or some triumph of one person over another, and the factions that go with that. And her answer to my question about what she saw in the news, she said, "Oh, I love watching the news." And it took me a long time to process, because I was teaching English in a summer camp in England last year, and I met this young man. He said, "I don't watch the news because I want to protect my mental health." And here was someone who I'd met, this lady earlier, and as I experienced her, she was a mind that was completely healed. And she didn't see herself as a body, she didn't see other people as a body, and she just saw the perfect plan unfolding in the universe, that every pain point, every desperate victim story, every mean, vindictive victimizer story was a cry for love. It was just, I'm ignorant of my new natural state. I'm in an artificial hypnosis and I'm sleeping. But all she saw was that, oh well, that'll go on for a while, there'll be resistance to questioning it, and then boom, the extension of love, which is your real nature, will flower. And that's the overwhelming story here, that no matter the pain, almost endless pain and suffering and pity and vengeful thoughts of the world, in the end, which is not something that happens in time, it's something that transcends time, the mind corrects itself and wakes up from the illusion of this limited identity. And so that's the best snapshot of a healed mind that I can describe. And it was like, there was a poem I read as a child about a little boy that walks by a little girl. I mean, they're probably about 10 or 11, not so little, and or maybe they're 6 or whatever. But the boy brushes past the little girl, and it's like, in that moment, he said, it's the soft texture of her dress on his calf or whatever, on his thigh, was enough, was like being punched in the face, like he was being woken up to his adulthood. And that moment where she said, those things about, like, it's almost too much to contain this joy inside. And yeah, I love watching the news. The average person finds the news quite depressing, but keeps addicted to it. And yet she saw it in a way that was just like, yeah, it's perfect. And to me, those experiences were like that poem, where I was just getting punched because I was looking with great urgency for spiritual maturity in myself. And so if you find it in someone else, and you've been chasing God by the tail and spirituality by the tail in India for decades, as I was like there for 10 years, and you're just confounded by all the miasma of the ego and the spiritual ego, and then there's someone that's just, they've reached a plateau inside. And that was what the real answer to my inner prayer for wisdom led me to. And it was like a punch in the face. It was like that, and it was like, okay, I'm the one that's creating this narrative in my mind that is poisonous to my elevation, to my enlightenment, and to my awakening, because I'm always looking unconsciously, the ego in me is always looking for a scapegoat and always looking for a reason or an argument to undermine the healing that I'm most hungry for.